Have you ever poured your heart into something, long nights, countless sacrifices, only to have someone else snatch the spotlight? Imagine spending months on a project, the kind that could change your career, only to see your manager smile, accept the praise and say, "It was all my idea." That happened to me. And trust me, she never saw what came next. Hi, my name is Emily Carter. At the time, I was working as a mid-level marketing analyst in a large corporation based in Chicago. It wasn't Google or Apple, but it was one of those companies where the hierarchy was steep, and everyone was fighting for visibility. Promotions weren't just about talent, they were about perception. And that, as I'd soon learn, was something my manager, Linda, understood better than anyone. Linda was the kind of boss who wore confidence like expensive perfume. You could smell it the second she walked into the room. She was polished, sharp, and always managed to stand at the center of every conversation, even if she had nothing new to add. Me? I was ambitious, but I believed in hard work. I wasn't the loudest in the room, but I was the one staying until 9 p.m., making sure our numbers were airtight, the presentations flawless, and the strategies grounded in research. I thought that was how you succeeded: do the work, do it well, and the rest would follow. That was naive. It started small. Linda would casually rephrase my ideas in meetings. I'd suggest an approach to a campaign, like targeting younger demographics on Instagram Reels instead of sinking money into outdated banner ads. She'd nod, let me finish, then 5 minutes later she'd say, "Actually, I was just thinking we should really pivot toward younger platforms. Instagram Reels, for example." The room would nod. She'd get the credit. First, I brushed it off. Maybe it wasn't intentional. Maybe she just forgot where the idea came from. But when it happened again and again, I started to notice a pattern. Still, I stayed quiet. I didn't want to rock the boat. Then came the project. It was the biggest pitch our department had handled in years, securing a multimillion-dollar deal with a high-profile client in the tech industry. If we landed it, the entire company would be buzzing. If we lost it, heads would roll. Linda assigned me to support the project. But really, I became the engine. I ran the research, built the strategy deck, designed the campaign visuals, wrote the messaging framework. I lived and breathed that project for nearly 3 months. I still remember the late nights at the office, eating takeout at my desk while everyone else went home. My boyfriend at the time would text me, "Are you alive?" My mom would call and ask if I was taking care of myself. I'd laugh it off, promising them it would all be worth it, because I thought, this is it. This is the project that will put me on the map. But I was wrong. The day of the big client presentation, I was nervous but excited. I had rehearsed my talking points, polished the slides until they shone. We walked into the conference room. A dozen executives in suits, the air thick with anticipation. Linda stood at the head of the table. She introduced herself, cracked a few jokes, then launched into the presentation using my slides, my research, my strategy, and she never once mentioned my name. I sat there, heart pounding, as she breezed through my work as if she had spent months creating it. When questions came, she answered confidently, using the talking points I had prepped. By the end of the meeting, the clients were nodding, impressed. One of them said, "Brilliant work, Linda." And she just smiled. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I just sat there, forcing a smile, my nails digging into my palm under the table. That night, I cried in my apartment. Not because I lost credit, but because I realized something deeper. Linda wasn't just ambitious. She was dangerous. And as long as I stayed silent, she would keep taking from me. So I made a decision. If she wanted to play dirty, I was going to play smarter. And that's when the revenge began. After that meeting, I walked out of the glass-walled conference room with my head spinning. The clients were ecstatic. Linda was glowing, already planning how she'd take the team out to celebrate. But I felt hollow. I wanted to shout, to call her out in front of everyone. But I knew that's exactly what she'd expect me to do. And if I lost my temper, she'd twist it against me. So instead, I smiled. I congratulated her. I played the obedient subordinate. But inside, I was burning. That night, sitting in my small apartment with an untouched carton of Chinese takeout, I grabbed my notebook and scribbled one word across the page in angry, bold letters. Revenge. If there's one thing I've learned in corporate America, it's that perception rules. It doesn't matter what you know, it matters what you can prove. So I started small. I went back through emails, chat logs, presentation drafts. Every late-night file I had sent her, every document with timestamps. I created a folder hidden encrypted, where I stored every shred of proof that the project had been my work. I also started recording our one-on-one meetings. Discreetly, of course. My state allowed one-party consent for recordings, and I made sure to keep it legal. Linda had a habit of saying things like, "Don't worry, I'll make sure leadership knows you helped out," or, "I just need you to finalize this, don't bother putting your name on it." At the time, those comments stung. Now, they were gold. If Linda was a shark, then I needed to become the water around her. Calm, invisible, but everywhere. I started connecting more with colleagues, grabbing coffee, chatting after work, offering to help on smaller tasks. Slowly, I built goodwill. People started to notice that while Linda was flashy, I was dependable. There was one coworker in particular, Jason, a senior analyst. He'd been at the company for almost a decade and had seen managers come and go. He was kind, sharp, and most importantly, respected. One afternoon, I casually mentioned, "Hey, did you notice how Linda presented the tech pitch?" Jason gave me a look and said quietly, "Yeah, I noticed. A lot of us did." That's when I knew I wasn't alone. People were watching. They just needed a reason to speak up. A few weeks later, another big opportunity landed. A campaign for a luxury brand that wanted a complete rebranding strategy. This was huge. And of course, Linda assigned me as support. I knew what would happen. She'd let me do the work, then swoop in and steal the spotlight again. But this time I wasn't going to stop her. In fact, I was going to help her. I worked day and night on the campaign, crafting not just one strategy but two. The real one. A smart, data-driven, innovative approach that could blow the client away. The decoy. A sloppy, flashy, short-sighted plan that looked good at first glance but would collapse under scrutiny. Guess which one I left in the shared folder labeled Final Draft? The day of the pitch, I felt a strange calmness. I wore my best blazer, tied my hair neatly, and sat at the table with my notes. Sure enough, Linda strutted in, carrying my decoy deck. She hadn't even reviewed it closely. She was so used to me delivering brilliance that she didn't bother double-checking. The clients came in, introductions were made, and Linda launched into the presentation with her usual dazzling smile. First it went smoothly. The opening slides looked polished. But then the cracks started to show. One executive frowned. "Wait, your projections don't line up with the market data." Another leaned forward. "This messaging, it feels generic. Did you test this?" Linda froze. She stammered, tried to improvise, but the questions kept coming. Sweat glistened on her forehead. And that's when I made my move. I cleared my throat and said gently, "Actually, if I may, I had prepared some additional notes just in case." All eyes turned to me. Linda's eyes widened, panic flickering across her face. I pulled out the real deck, the one I had polished to perfection. I smoothly walked them through the data-driven strategy, the targeted messaging, the creative concepts backed by research. The executives leaned in, nodding, impressed. By the end, one of them said, "Now that feels like the kind of strategy we were looking for." Linda's face? Priceless. After the meeting, Linda cornered me in the hallway, her voice low and venomous. "What the hell was that, Emily?" I looked her dead in the eyes and said, "That was me saving your job." She didn't have a comeback. But the damage was already done. The clients were impressed with me, not her. And back at the office, whispers started spreading. People had seen what happened. They were putting the pieces together. Jason later pulled me aside and said with a smirk, "That was brilliant. You played her at her own game." But I wasn't done. I had all the recordings, all the proof. And now I had witnesses too. So when leadership announced performance reviews, I saw my chance. I scheduled a private meeting with the VP of Marketing, a woman known for her no-nonsense approach. I walked into her office with my folder, my recordings, my neatly organized timeline of Linda's contributions. I didn't whine. I didn't play the victim. I simply laid out the facts. By the time I finished, the VP sat back, stunned. "Emily," she said, "this is a lot. And honestly, it explains so much." I left her office with my hands shaking, but in the best way possible. Over the next month, things unraveled for Linda. She was quietly removed from high-profile projects. Colleagues stopped backing her up in meetings. Clients began requesting me by name. And the cherry on top? When the luxury brand campaign launched and became a massive success, the company newsletter featured my name, front and center. Linda wasn't mentioned at all. After the campaign's success, I started noticing subtle changes around the office. It wasn't just that people respected me more, it was the way they looked at Linda. Before, she commanded attention when she walked into a room. Now, people avoided eye contact. They'd glance at her, then look back at me, as if silently acknowledging they knew the truth. Linda tried to maintain her usual swagger, expensive heels clicking down the hallway, fake smile plastered on. But there was a tremor in her voice during meetings. She wasn't untouchable anymore. And I knew the final domino was about to fall. A few weeks later, I was called into another meeting with the VP of Marketing. This time the head of HR was there too. My stomach tightened, but when I sat down they both smiled. "Emily," the VP said, "thank you for your patience. We've conducted a thorough review of recent projects, including feedback from clients and staff. And it's clear your contributions have been outstanding." HR chimed in. "We've also received multiple complaints about Linda's leadership style and credibility." My heart raced. Multiple complaints? I wasn't the only one. Then the VP leaned forward, her voice calm but sharp. "We want to offer you a promotion, senior marketing strategist. Effective immediately." I nearly cried right there. Months of silence, planning, gathering proof. It was paying off. Of course, Linda didn't take it well. The day my promotion was announced in the company-wide email, she stormed into my office, slamming the door behind her. "This is ridiculous," she hissed. "Do you really think you can just waltz in here and take what's mine?" I stared at her, completely calm. "Funny. Isn't that what you've been doing to me?" Her face turned red. She opened her mouth, then closed it, realizing she had no defense. Not anymore. And then, like a final twist of fate, Jason walked by, glanced in, and smirked. Word was already spreading. A month later, during the quarterly all-hands meeting, the CEO himself congratulated me by name for the luxury brand campaign's success. He even asked me to share some insights with the entire company. I walked up on stage, microphone in hand, and for the first time in my career, I felt completely seen. I wasn't just the girl behind the slides anymore, I was the strategist, the leader. As I spoke, I saw Linda in the audience. She was pale, her jaw tight, clapping mechanically. Everyone else was smiling, nodding, genuinely engaged. That's when it hit me. My revenge wasn't about humiliating her in some dramatic showdown. It was about exposing the truth and letting her destroy herself. Over the next few weeks, Linda's world crumbled. She was removed from leading projects. Clients refused to work with her. HR began a formal performance investigation. Eventually, whispers of her behavior reached upper management. Rumors swirled that she'd been caught exaggerating her past achievements, too. And then she was gone. Officially, she resigned to pursue new opportunities. But everyone knew she had been pushed out. The woman who once strutted through the halls like she owned the place had left quietly, without a farewell party, without applause. I'll never forget the day after she left. Jason stopped by my desk with 2 cups of coffee. He set one down in front of me and said, "You did it. You took down the queen." I laughed, shaking my head. "No, she took down herself. I just made sure people saw it." We clinked our coffee cups like champagne glasses. It wasn't just victory, it was justice. Looking back, I realized revenge doesn't always mean fire and fury. Sometimes the best revenge is patience, strategy, and letting the truth shine through. Linda thought she could silence me forever. Instead, she became her own undoing. And me? I learned the most important lesson of my career. Never let anyone else write your story. When Linda left, the entire office felt different. It was like a storm cloud had finally lifted. People no longer whispered nervously during meetings, afraid she might steal their words. Ideas flowed more freely, and the energy felt lighter. For me, it was surreal. Just months earlier, I had been invisible, working long nights, pouring my soul into projects that never carried my name. Now I was leading presentations, mentoring junior staff, and being asked to share insights at leadership roundtables. I didn't just earn a promotion, I earned respect. But here's the thing no one tells you about revenge. Once it's over, you're left with yourself. I spent a lot of nights reflecting. At first, I wondered if I had been too harsh. Did I really need to bring Linda down so completely? But then I remembered all those nights I cried in my apartment, questioning my worth. The way she dismissed me, silenced me, stole from me. I hadn't destroyed her. I'd simply held up a mirror and let her own choices catch up with her. That realization was freeing. I also started noticing how common my story was. Over coffee breaks and happy hours, coworkers from other departments would confide. My manager does that too. I've had ideas stolen more times than I can count. It's like they think being the loudest makes them the smartest. It wasn't just me. It was a culture, one where credit often flowed upward while the real work stayed buried. And that made me even more determined, not just to succeed for myself but to create a better environment for the people coming up behind me. The most satisfying moment wasn't Linda leaving. It wasn't even my promotion. It was months later, when a junior analyst named Sarah came to me nervous and quiet, with a brilliant idea for a campaign. She whispered, "I don't know if it's good enough." I smiled and said, "It's more than good enough. And when we present it, your name will be on it." The look on her face, hopeful, relieved, empowered, that was worth more than any revenge. Because I wasn't just breaking the cycle for myself. I was breaking it for others too. So here's what I learned. Credit matters. It's not about ego. It's about recognition, growth, and opportunity. Silence is dangerous. When you let someone steal from you once, they'll do it again. Revenge doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes the smartest revenge is patience, strategy, and letting the truth expose itself. And maybe the biggest lesson of all, no matter how hard someone tries to steal your spotlight, your light will always shine through if you keep going. So that's my story. That's how my manager stole credit for my work. And how I made her regret it. But now I want to hear from you. Backhand index pointing right. Have you ever had someone take credit for your hard work? Backhand index pointing right. Did you stay silent? Or did you find a way to fight back? Backhand index pointing right. And if you could go back, what would you do differently? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. And I know there are people out there who need to hear your story too. Because here's the truth. Workplaces don't change because policies shift. They change because people like us, people who refuse to stay silent, stand up and demand better. So let's keep telling these stories. Let's keep exposing the Lindas of the world. And let's make sure no one ever gets away with stealing what doesn't belong to them. Thank you for listening.